and there's this sudden strange thought that, what if I'm dead? With that, as she spoke, she transformed the reality of it, how it's hyper real and more real than physical life, is sometimes so awe-inspiring. I'd gone to bed with the intention of having an OBE, but I was kind of tired from my brother's 40th birthday party, which was held at my house just a few days before. I toyed with staying away for the long haul, just to keep my focus and try and enter the state directly, but I thought after a while it would be better for my well-being if I just tried to become aware within my dream. As I drifted off, I focused and I pulsed the awareness between my brow centre and the back of my head, and the brow centre and the back of my head and the brow centre, and I kept going back and forth between them. I was trying to ride the crest of a wave of awareness as I entered sleep. As I began falling asleep, thoughts of the party that had occurred a couple of days before were flowing through my mind, and eventually I found myself back in the party in my living room. It was towards the end of the night and people were starting to leave, and I went out into the street and the cars were starting to disperse as people left, and some were staying behind. There was a couple on my driveway where people had gone home in taxis to let the alcohol wear off, and my car was a little bit off centre on the driveway, and I thought I better straighten that up. So I sort of drove it off the driveway, straightened it up, and then I sort of got out of the car and I walked down the road a little way, and then I just turned around and looked, and my car had gone. And it was with that instantly I knew, I was aware. Everything took on that ethereal glow that happens when you become aware. The last thing I remember was being at a party and drinking, and now getting out of my car, and there's this sudden strange thought that, what if I'm dead? What if I'd been drinking, and what if I'd gone driving in the car after a party and had an accident and died? And with that I thought I'd better check back in on my body, and I sort of shut my eyes in the experience and it faded away and I was back in my body. And I thought, that's fine, I'm still alive. So I just stayed still and I focused and I went back in. And this time I just came out of my body in the bedroom, and I headed down towards my dressing area, and I sort of headed towards the window, and I thought I'll fly out the window. And as I sort of pushed through the window, I just had this strange feeling, like an habitual feeling that I was still in the physical somehow. And with that I kind of got this sort of weird partially stuck within the window, as I sort of like my head was poked half through and I was kind of stuck trying to get through. And then the absurdity of the situation struck me and I just relaxed and I floated through the window and down onto the street. And as I came down onto the street, I started to walk out of my driveway, and instantly I noticed this man. There was instant familiarity with him. It was, I recognised him as an old friend, someone I'd known for a long time. And we greeted each other warmly, and I shook his hand, and I was just about to start questioning him because there was this recognition. I knew him from some experiences before. He was the guy who ushered my brother into the bedroom that time. Anyway, instead of speak to me, he just directed me across the street. He held his hand out and directed me across the street. And over the other side of the road there was two women stood under an umbrella, and there was a Asian lady, and they both had dogs with them. And I approached them and I went over and I started speaking to the Chinese lady, and I just asked her name. And as I asked her name, this sort of booming male voice came out and said, "Pete Baker." And I thought, that's strange. And with that, as she spoke, she transformed into a male transgendered individual dressed as a woman. It had sort of dark black hair that was scraggy and, it looked like it had been dyed too many times, and very obvious male features. She wasn't very convincing as a woman. And she was berating her dog, and I was sort of wondering why she was doing that. And she began to explain to me that the dog used to belong to her mother's brother, and he died and left the dog to her, and she's now got to look after it. And it struck me that she didn't even realise that she herself was dead. And it was with that, I didn't mean or look to do it or anything like that, but instantly I had this compulsion where my hand lifted up again, and I raised it up and I put it in front of her chest and I pressed it against her, and with that I awoke. And a few weeks later I woke at 3:40 AM after having a rather profound out-of-body experience. I'd found myself aware and I was in this room. It was very plain, but it was lit with a yellowy green hue, and in it were just two of these glass sarcophaguses. In them there was a younger person, younger than myself, and someone about my own age, but they were covered in like a gel, and I couldn't really see them other than the fact that I could make out there was a bodily form within them. And I knew that these people, implicitly, that they were sharing the human experience with me. And as they slept within these sarcophagus, they were actually alive and operating within physical reality, and they were accompanying me on the journey in some way. I went over and I patted the larger sarcophagus, and I just sort of said gently, "I'll see you when you come through," meaning I'd see them when their physical life had expired and we would meet again. And with that I turned around and the room dissolved and it disappeared, and I was now in this lush green cornfield, and the sun was bright and shining down. There was a beautiful tree at the end, and the corn was swaying in the wind, and I would just look at the sky and wonder as I spun around and just touched the corn as I went. And it was sort of like this moment of real awe and reflection where I thought, wow, it doesn't matter how many times you've been in this space, the reality of it, how it's hyper real and more real than physical life, is sometimes so awe-inspiring. It's amazing. And as I sort of walked through the cornfield, I looked into the distance and there was an opening, and I saw a car that was like a chauffeur-driven limo. And with that I sort of knew that there was someone within the vehicle, and then instantly I'm transported into the back of the car. I'm in the back of the car and there's this lady there with dark hair and a black dress. Very quickly it became apparent that this was actually a transgendered man. We spoke to each other and there was this moment of recognition. I thought, this is that person I saw only a couple of weeks ago. And there was a instant knowledge that I thought, still doesn't realise that she's actually dead. And with that, it was like the space took on a role of confirming through experience that was the case for her. We began to speed up at breakneck speed, and a car just pulled out of a side road. And with that, it was obvious there was going to be a collision. It just sort of spins up into the air and landed on the roof. And it was like that, with a flash of light, and suddenly we're back in the room that I started in, the one with the yellowy green hue. And stood there next to me is the transgendered lady, now looking a lot more feminine, dark hair, but just had a long white t-shirt on. And it was just in that background there where I thought the realisation had now become clear to her. She was actually dead. We spoke about how this new world was a new home, and that how this place that you're in, this environment, is much more fluid, it's much more thought responsive, and it flows, and you can move from one state to another much more easily. And I explained that body image here is irrelevant. It's an outer reflection of the inner, and you are what you believe yourself to be. So if the feminine is what form is what she felt drawn to, that is what she could be. And she just sort of smiled at me and then said in a jokingly camp way, "Yeah, but I did have a great body, didn't I?" And I sort of rolled my eyes and agreed. And this is a theme that I'd noticed throughout, in all these travels, all these various times that I'd been into these spaces, was that people just tended to not know when they'd passed into that space. They didn't realise that their limitations as a human were no longer necessary. You don't get stuck because you're trapped. You get stuck because you don't realise you're already free. And what I would experience next went far beyond the afterlife. It wasn't about who we are after death. It was about what we are beyond all of it.